Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I am Dead Ponic, and welcome back to another um, review of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I am Dead Ponic, and with me again is King Orange.
Greetings, my fellow friends.
All right, so some background on season 5. This is the season that started the transition between when George Lucas was in the process of selling the rights to Disney. So as a result, some of the quality of the episodes is either way out there or it's very inconsistent. But this is also the this has some of the better episodes. In my opinion anyway. But all right, so starting off with the first episode of this is actually,
Revival.
yeah, this is the continuation from season 4, which is where Maul and Savage Press they steal a bunch of credits, and well, they come in a conflict over what they should do with the credits, and so a mini lightsaber duel ensues, and Maul wins despite being out of practice for at least 20 years minimum.
10 years.
10 years, sorry. And then well, they managed to actually bribe a bunch of pirates to take on Hondo, and this also leads to Obi-Wan and Master Adi Gallia uh coming to the aid of Hondo. And unfortunately, now this is one big difference between Legends and TCW is that in Legends it was Grievous who killed Adi Gallia on Boz Pity.
Boz Petty.
Yeah, Boz Pity. But in this case, it's actually Savage Press who basically he impales her with his horns. Not gonna make any jokes here, but basically this also causes Obi-Wan and to flee with Hondo inside their hideout, where we get one of the few times where Obi-Wan, of all people, takes an offensive stance against two opponents, and he uses Jar-Kai against Maul and Savage, while Hondo is moved to tears by the pirates' betrayal. But then he decides, you know what, I'm gonna be nice, and you know what, those Horned Devils probably have treasure on their ship. So that ends up happening. And so Obi-Wan manages to cut off Savage's arm, and that leads to Maul and him having to retreat. And, well, shenanigans ensue, and they think Obi-Wan thinks that they're dead. And, yeah, overall, this episode's pretty good in terms of that. And I really like, well, any episode with Hondo is gonna be good. So, as we've already established.
So, within this first episode, it's kind of served as an opening and kind of help establish that Maul is now going to operate as a recurring villain within the series, within what remains of the series. So it kind of helps establish that. It also has a pretty good fight between Kenobi and Maul, and it also has a pretty good line coming from Hondo.
Oh yeah.
Filth, you will pay for your insolence. Insolence. We are pirates. We don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, there's a bit of the soundtrack that I really like too, which is it's just a really good part of the soundtrack during the fight. But overall, I'd say this is a good opener to the season, comparing to what happens at the end of the season. But we'll get into that in a bit. All right, so the first official arc of this season is the Onderon arc, where basically the Jedi have they're playing proxy war here, basically, because what they do is they decide to go to Onderon and teach a bunch of resistance fighters to how to effectively resist the current king who has usurped the throne and is backed by the separatists. Um, the main part of this is that this is where Lux comes back, and we're introduced to several other characters, namely Stila and Saw Gerrera. and I will get to Saw in a little bit, but needless to say, this also is, it kind of does foreshadow a little bit of what the rebellion would eventually become or how it started out, but it's also a really good like demonstration of like the Jedi's experience with dealing with the battle droids, where they demonstrate how to take out a tank and also how to deal with droidicas. Where they got the droidica dummies and the tank, I have no idea, but that's beside the point. So then we're just gonna call them rebels, but the rebels basically move into the city and they start. This transitions into the next episode where they basically start attacking the droids guerrilla style, and they basically begin calling out the king, who, if it isn't made clear already, this guy is a massive douchebag, and he never stops eating that stupid pear thing. I don't know what's up with that. If you wanted to make a villain who's hateable, this is one direction to go. Or to quote CinemaSins, the director said, "Let's give you an apple to eat so you look more like an asshole." Oh, when does the droid general come in? Is that the third or fourth episode?
General Kalani?
Yeah.
General Kalani comes in episode... I think he appears in the tail end of episode 2, and he kind of becomes a recurring antagonist in episode 3 and 4.
Okay, so yeah, and then, well, basically, but the only thing is that Ahsoka is also left behind to kind of observe, but she's told not to get involved. And during this time, well, Steela, basically smooches Lux, which does kind of make, Ahsoka a little bit jealous, but of course, she's a Jedi, so she can put her feelings aside from that. Probably the only thing I would say about the first 2 episodes is that it's funny because they take all their training and they they have to improvise when the rollies come in, which I thought was really cool. Even Ahsoka says, "I've never seen a droidica taken out that way before." And so they blow up a giant power station with their tank that they stole. The third episode, basically, Saw's not exactly conforming to authority here and steal his plan, so he decides to go rogue and try to rescue the king himself. However, to set an example, the current king decides, you know what, I'm going to be an evil bastard and I'm going to execute this guy. So the rebels try to rescue him, but before that, Saw manages to convince one of the generals of the Onderonian militia that basically they're fighting for the wrong cause, and the general and his militia join in, and they save the true king, and they flee into the wilderness, and Ahsoka reveals herself to, which now means that the Separatists know that the Jedi are involved. So then, the final episode, basically, they go into the Highlands, and now we get introduced to something that I was briefly seen in Revenge of the Sith, but it wasn't really capitalized on: the droid gunships. Oh god, these things are... So yeah, so basically, and also, well, as we said before, Kalani is more of a presence in these last 2 episodes. But since the council is refusing to give assistance to the rebels because they're getting their asses kicked, Anakin suggests, why don't we go through proxy and basically purchase weapons off the black market and have Hondo, of all people, deliver the goods. And I gotta say, that may be one of the smartest decisions they've ever made. Now, granted, Hondo's a pirate. He's not exactly trustworthy, but the fact that they're willing to do that, pretty hilarious.
Also, it is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, and also Hondo delivering the weapons, and he's like, oh, as soon as he takes fire, he's like, oh, gotta go, bye. And Well, they get the rocket launchers, they deal with the gunships, but unfortunately, during this, Steela falls from the cliff, and Ahsoka tries to save her, but it doesn't work out, and sadly, Steela dies. Now, this is actually a pivotal point because this marks the beginning of Saw's descent to insanity, but we're not going to talk about that. So overall, I would say this arc is pretty good. It's definitely one of the stronger arcs of this season, and it really highlights a lot of a lot of the tactics that the rebellion would eventually use against the Empire. It's kind of like a pre-rebel alliance. Um, it's also just it's really good character development for Lux as well, I think. Orange, thoughts?
I think overall the episode does a pretty decent job in establishing the war situation that is going on, and it's pretty much more or less an allegory to Afghanistan, basically.
Yeah, pretty. You could argue. I think we talked about this in private. I believe we regarded the separatists as the Russians, and well, basically the Jedi and the Jedi Council are basically the U.S. Support via the CIA are basically supporting the Mujahideen.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's
And
that kind of.
meanwhile in this, the CIS is supporting this king on maintaining his rule.
Yeah, the allegory is there, and but we're not going to get into the history because it's a bit it's very convoluted and very complicated. Anyway, so next arc is the Youngling arc, which starts with the Gathering. Now, I actually don't know if this conflicts with any known source materials from Legends, but this episode basically starts off with a bunch of younglings going to Ilum to get their lightsaber crystals. Now, the only thing is that they call them Kyber crystals as opposed to Ilum crystals, but I guess you could make the argument that the name is interchangeable, so I'm not going to complain about that. And this is also the first time that we see a Wookiee Jedi Padawan, which is probably going to come up later. I don't know, where we haven't gotten to that show yet, but I find that pretty interesting. So each of the Padawans go into the cave to get their crystal, and they go through various challenges in order to get their crystal, which I find really I like that aspect, and I like the fact that they're kind of taking a focus off of the war for at least one arc. Um, and also Master Yoda is there for some reason. You couldn't have had, I don't know, some other Jedi Master there, but no, you had to have Grandmaster Yoda there. But yeah, it's
I mean, Yoda's pretty important when it comes with stuff related to the Jedi, so I mean, it's not really a surprise.
it is a overall. I say this first episode's pretty good, but now we get into the next episode, which is a test of strength, which introduces the droid that appears in the Ahsoka series, Huyang, who is the guy who basically has provided parts and seen almost every Jedi who has built their lightsaber. And um, while they're building their lightsabers, we learned a little bit about some of the mechanics behind lightsaber construction, because one of the Padawans actually puts together their lightsaber hastily, and Huyang says, if you turn this on, it's going to blow up in your face, basically. But that's all interrupted by Hondo again.
Again.
I mean, okay, I got to admit, I was suffering a little bit of Hondo afterburn, but any episode with Hondo is going to be good. It usually is, but this may or may not be the exception. So basically, Hondo gets word that the lightsaber crystals are worth like millions on the black market, so he tries to take them. But then shenanigans ensue, where it transitions into the next episode, where Ahsoka is captured by Hondo, and basically the younglings have to rescue her. and shenanigans ensue. But then, for some reason, well, there's something going. Well, in between all that, Obi-Wan tries to help the younglings out, but he's attacked by Grievous, and then
Big shocker.
yeah, and then but the younglings actually succeed in getting into Hondo's lair, but they end up being captured themselves, which ends with the last episode, which basically starts off with Count Dooku suddenly remembering, oh wait, I was humiliated and captured by pirates. Hey Grievous, go take care of these pirates for me. Which, as we talked about in the last review in season 4, Grievous is basically woefully underpowered and over exaggerated. This is the episode where we mentioned where he gets his ass handed to him by a Jedi Padawan. But at this stage in her career, Ahsoka was, even though she was still a Padawan, she had grown quite a bit over the course of the series. But anyway, basically, Grievous wrecks shit, and so Ahsoka and Hondo have to team up in order to push him back. And so Obi-Wan and Co come in and rescue the Padawans, the younglings, and Ahsoka, and they bring them back to Coruscant, and they build their lightsabers. They actually show up at the end of the season again, believe it or not. We'll get to that in a little bit. All right. This is the arc.
Oh dear.
Oh god, yes.
We're getting to this arc.
Okay, the droid arc. Okay, so basically, this is basically where the Jedi basically sent a team of droids commanded by a little guy named Colonel Gaskin to retrieve some kind of
secret module
thing. Yeah. And basically, and one thing to note about
something MacGuffin.
Yeah, one thing to note about these 4 episodes, the title card is actually light blue instead of yellow, as per the norm, just like with the Maul episodes. So, and also,
was there a particular reason for that?
I actually don't know, but this team also includes R2, so I mean it's not all bad. But basically, they get a bunch of upgrades. They steal the module, but then this leads into a sunny day in the void, which Orange,
oh dear goodness.
Didn't you mention that this apparently was George Lucas's favorite episode?
Apparently, which God only knows how, but I'm not gonna pretend to make sense out of it. I'm really not.
Yeah, nothing really happens in A Sunny Day in the Void that you could probably skip this episode. But anyway, so Missing in Action, next episode. Finally, we get something good where we actually are introduced to a clone commando named Gregor. And my god, I am loving this already because this is a step up from the last 2 episodes. The only other time we've actually seen clone commandos was it back in season 3, and that was Delta Squad apparently. Arj, can you confirm?
Yeah, they make a cameo during the Night Sister arc.
Yeah, which is good and kind of bad at the same time, even though they don't. Actually, no. Boss does talk. So, anyway, so yeah, so basically, Gregor helps them get onto a transport while he provides cover fire, and an explosion happens, and basically they think that Gregor died, which, well, we're not gonna spoil anything, but there's a very strong chance that he survived. But seeing a clone commando in action again is just it makes this arc worth it, in my opinion. So then this concludes with Point of No Return, which is basically where the droid squad actually finds out that the Republic cruiser that they board is actually being captured by the Separatists and being used as a giant bomb to take out a bunch of Jedi at a strategic conference.
Yeah, it's like some space station.
Yeah. The main thing here is that R2 goes boom and he gets separated into a bunch of pieces, and it looks like he's, dead. But thankfully, they put him back together, and it gets all emotional. So
I was
overall,
about to say this is R2. He can't die.
I mean, well, he can get torn apart, but he can't technically die. Not yet, anyway.
Hey, he has to appear in A New Hope. He can't die.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, so overall, okay, this is the arc that we both kind of dread. So I would say watch Missing in Action, but the other episodes you can take or leave. But
Wait,
overall,
what? Wait, what? Where are you on? Oh, Miss. Oh, you mean as the droid arc as a whole? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can take or leave the entire arc as a whole, or you can just watch one individual episode, which is fine. That's what I do generally. It can't be
Yeah.
at least it's not as bad as Shadow Warriors.
Oh dear goodness, we'll get to that.
Oh, we already got to that.
Oh yeah.
That was in
Oh
season
yeah.
4.
Oh yeah. You're right. Yeah, Shadow Warriors was
All
bad.
right, so now we
Um,
come to the next arc, which I guess this is this is
the Maul on. I don't really know what to call this arc, so I'm just gonna call it the Maul takeover arc.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
Maul ends up being found. So in the last episode that he appears in, he managed to get into an escape pod before his ship crashed. And his escape pod is drifting in space. No one knows what the hell's going on. Meanwhile, they get lucky enough to be found by none other than Death Watch, who ends up basically taking them back to their main camp, their base essentially. And after Pre Vizsla kind of asks Maul about who he is and everything else, Maul ends up kind of confirming everything about his identity and everything else. And this eventually leads to them forming like an alliance with each other.
yeah, and so they basically plot to take over
Mandalore.
Mandalore, and basically what they do is they basically get some of the other crime cartels on board, which include the Black Sun, the Pike Syndicate, and the Hutt. Specifically, they go to Jabba the Hutt, which
So the only thing you can tell me is that I will find Jabba at Jabba's palace.
yeah. So basically, and then in the next episode, Shades of Reason, basically Maul and his alliance of crime syndicates, they take over Mandalore and they actually capture Duchess Satine, but Vizsla challenges into a duel for the right to rule Mandalore, and we get pretty much one of the best fights in season 5, I would say, because it starts out with a regular old lightsaber duel. Now, Pre Vizsla does have the dark saber, keep in mind. But then, after they get disarmed, Pre Vizsla uses all of his gadgets. And then finally, well, Maul manages to defeat him. But the thing is that they do here is that they don't show Maul decapitating Pre Vizsla. But this also turns basically Bo-Katan and a few of her minions basically saying we don't want you leading us basically, and basically they bail. And then we come to the final episode of this arc, which is also very sad here, but um, which is the Lawless. Basically, Maul lures Obi-Wan to Mandalore because before she was captured, uh, Satine managed to get a distress signal, so Obi-Wan borrows the Twilight from Anakin, uh, and
For the last time.
yeah, rest in peace, Twilight. You were a good girl. You were perfect. You were great. I liked the Twilight actually. It was a pretty good ship. But well, shenanigans ensue. The Twilight goes boom. Maul ends up capturing Obi-Wan, but he decides, you know what? It's too easy to just kill you. I'm gonna make you suffer. So he kills Satine. And this is a very heartfelt moment, which I just I like this scene quite a bit just because of the emotion. Now, I don't actually know if Obi-Wan had a love interest in the old Legends continuity, but
He did. Uh, it was like a Jedi Padawan. I forget her name. I'll probably we'll probably have to put it up on screen or something when I remember the name.
and so basically, well, shenanigans ensue. Obi-Wan escapes, but then, of all people, uh, Darth Sidious shows up on Mandalore to basically confront Maul, and well, he says, "You have been replaced. You have become a rival." Sorry, my Palpatine's not the greatest, but anyway, they end up fighting, and now,
Palpatine kills Savage.
yeah, now I gotta admit something here. Now the Council Forecast has kind of pointed this out, but now some people often say, "Oh, Sidious is the greatest lightsaber duelist ever," but it's like when you really look at this fight in particular, no, he's not. And also, there's actually one argument that kind of, and one theory that I kind of have here, because during their like off-screen time, it's entirely possible that Malt gave lessons to Savage on how to use the saber staff more effectively, which I find kind of interesting. Doesn't help him though, but so basically Maul and Sidious end up fighting. They clash, and Sidious actually manages to defeat Maul. Now, one thing we should note here that Maul doesn't show up again until season 7. However, there is the Darth Maul Son of Dathomir comic, which basically explains how he was able to escape from Sidious's clutches.
Darth. Yeah, he's basically held in a prison by both Sidious and Dooku, and the comic kind of showcases that Sidious was using Maul as bait to draw Mother Talzin out of hiding, since, according to Sidious, he considered Talzin to be one of the only other people that rivaled his own power. So this leads to the whole shenanigans in the Son of Dathomir comic, which was originally going to be planned to be in season 6, but that didn't work out.
No, it did, unfortunately. But so basically, what happens in that comic is that Dooku gets possessed by Talzin. I think we already made a joke regarding the voodoo thing in the last season review, but Sidious brings along Grievous, and they end up clashing. And well, Maul basically like has to flee because Talzin basically takes on Dooku and Palpatine, and ends up blowing up and basically becoming a spirit. So yeah, we won't see Maul again for a while. Now, regarding, there is one other teeny tiny detail about the dark saber that isn't technically brought up until Rebels brings it up, and also the Mandalorian, but we won't get into that. Oh, another thing. This episode was also dedicated to the voice actor who played Palpatine, Ian Abercrombie, who tragically passed away. Orange, you want to give more detail on that?
Yeah, so from season 1 to 5, he ended up playing Palpatine throughout most of that. However, I'm not really sure how he passed away, but he ended up passing away during season 5. And so while he did manage to get recordings through most of the season, he ended up passing away shortly after this very episode, The Lawless, and this resulted in him having to get replaced by Tim Curry for the remainder of the season and later on within season 6.
Yeah, I still question why they got Tim Curry to frickin' do to voice Palpatine, but it's not a big
A
deal.
great mystery, that is.
Yes, very much so. I mean, Tim Curry is he plays a lot of great villains, but of all things, to play Palpatine, that requires a certain dedication, and also the most noteworthy thing about Tim Curry in terms of his villain performances is that he actually played the original Pennywise, which, yeah, that we don't need to get into
Yeah, that was something.
that.
But yeah, so anyways, the Lawless ended up concluding, and this ends up leading us to the season finale, which is the Ahsoka Framed arc.
Yeah. So,
We're gonna have a lot to talk about with this one.
oh yes.
So to start off, we start out at the beginning. I believe this episode is meant to establish the beginning of the Outer Rim sieges, if I'm not mistaken.
And also it does, and also because the beginning of the episode takes place on Cana Nemoidia, that line from episode 3 where that business on Cana Nemoidia doesn't count, either that was a retcon or it's making reference to this, but Obi-Wan wasn't on Cana Nemoidia. Also, well, Anakin goes unconscious and his fighter ends up crashing, and Ahsoka basically is all kind of chippy about it. Your fighter crashed. I saved you. You're welcome. Then they get called back to the Jedi Temple, where it turns out there was a bomb that went off.
It's a bomb!
Yeah, and basically, so it starts off that, and so they find out it was a person named Letta Termond, and then, well, the next episode, basically Ahsoka is blamed for Letta, being force choked, and is basically thrown into prison by none other than Admiral Tarkin. Oh God, I thought I never see the end of this.
Yeah, Tarkin ends up making a return from the Citadel arc in season 3, and let's just say he's definitely climbed up the ranks.
Now, one thing I will complain about this is that Tarkin is taking this way out of context. And based on Ahsoka's hand movements in the hologram recording, basically there's no way she is the one who is basically choking this person. So Ahsoka ends up escaping and going on the lam, which is interesting. And, well, basically Anakin has to talk her down, but then she says, you know what? Screw this. You have to trust me to basically figure this out for myself. And so she goes into the Coruscant underworld, which leads into...
And this leads to the third episode, To Catch a Jedi. So Ahsoka's on the run. The Coruscant police are hunting her down, and then a detachment of the Coruscant Guard is also trying to hunt her down, mainly within two teams, one led by Anakin and the others led by Plo Koon.
Also, Ahsoka runs to Ventress, who is still a bounty hunter now, and they ended up getting into a fight with the Coruscant Guard. And this is the part that really, later on, this is the part that'll really piss me off. But basically, it's a good hand-to-hand fight. And also, so Ahsoka says, if you help me out, finding out who actually did this, I can maybe get you a pardon of some kind. And they agree to that. And so, Ahsoka manages to contact a Jedi in the temple, namely Barriss, and tells
foreshadowing much.
Yeah, and tells her about some kind of warehouse. But as they go their separate ways, Ventress is knocked out by a mysterious person, and her lightsabers are taken. More on that in a bit. But basically, as Ahsoka's about to uncover what the hell's going on, she's attacked by what she thinks is Ventress. But then she's disarmed and then eventually captured by the Coruscant Guard. And then...
Yeah, and this leads to the final episode, the Wrong Jedi, which has it where Ahsoka is put on trial. She ends up getting expelled from the Jedi Order by the Council, because the Council doesn't want to risk pissing off the Senate.
Also,
and the Senate are like...
Also, they can't get their head out of their asses. Just saying.
Yeah, so they expel Ahsoka from the Order, which leads her to be put in a military trial, and the prosecutor is none other than, say it with me, kids, Admiral Tarkin.
But
And
Ahsoka's defense counselor is Padme, who why didn't she become a lawyer?
desperate times, desperate measures.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, while Padme is doing the most she can to try to defend Ahsoka within this court, Anakin is seeking out trying to figure out who actually did it. So Anakin first catches up to Ventress and interrogates her in a very polite manner. Um, I'm gonna avoid jokes, and this eventually leads. Oh my god! This eventually leads to Ventress saying when Anakin figures out that Ventress wasn't the one that did it, he thinks he's hitting a dead end. Ventress ends up telling him, though, that Ahsoka got into contact with Barriss right before she entered the warehouse. And so this leads Anakin to go back to the temple and have a word or two to say to Barriss and a couple things to ask her. And
she panics.
Shenanigans unfold, and Barriss reveals, bum bum bum, Ventress's red lightsabers. Bum bum bum.
Yeah, I'm gonna say right now, this reveal was just it came completely out of left field, and it's a wasted opportunity. But we don't have. Well, you know what? I'm gonna say screw it. I'm gonna get into this little rant here. I actually have perfect reason to believe that Barriss, because now in Legends she actually died on I think it was Kashyyyk.
Felucia.
Okay, sorry. But so in this new continuity, I guess, my theory is that she actually becomes one of the Inquisitor from Rebels. Because the Inquisitor from Rebels is a Miri Ellen, save for one thing, which is the British with the English accent. However, if what I've read about the interrogation stuff and breaking the Jedi and all that is anything to go by, it's entirely possible that Barriss, after Order 66 came down and the Empire took power, it's entirely possible that she was she was converted and she basically shed her old identity for this new identity, and she basically lost the accent. Either that or they just replaced the voice actor. I don't know, but this is one of those reveals that is just like, really, you couldn't come up with a more clever way to reveal this. And
It very much comes across like they just had a dartboard of Jedi who had to, of different Jedi that could have potentially done it. And they're like, Barriss. All right, let's do that. And the problem with this is that we haven't seen Barriss since season 2, which kind of makes the transition from going from a, mostly disciplined and very by the books Jedi to essentially basically a terrorist in a matter of, in between those two episodes. It kind of just makes the whole thing feel jarring as hell.
now her speech when she gets presented before the court is kind of interesting because she basically says, well, the Jedi have the council has their own head up their ass, and basically they're the ones who are basically continuing this, making this war even possible, and they need to be punished for it, and all that anti-war sentiment stuff. But basically, yeah, this is also
War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
yeah, and so, well, basically the council apologizes to Ahsoka and says, our bad, you can come back into the order, but Ahsoka says, fuck that, I'm leaving. And, well, we get a heartfelt moment with Anakin and Ahsoka, and yeah, this conversation is pretty good, and I gotta admit, I love, like, the hints that Anakin drops about, like, if I was given the opportunity, I would have left the Jedi Order too. And so Ahsoka walks off down the steps, and that's the last we see of her until season 7. But we're not gonna.
Which it's kind of weird to consider that, considering that season 5 was sort of the last season with George really at the helm. It kind of even makes it imply that, prior to Disney canon, season 5 is the last time Ahsoka is really on there as far as Lucas canon's concerned. And so it's interesting to think about that, where, it's kind of like this very much could have been the end for her journey within the show. And, as far as many people, like, that's how I felt when I first saw it. And it was kind of like, holy moly, Ahsoka left the show? Like, holy shit.
It also shows, like, the council has their head up their ass.
Especially fucking Mace Windu, the whole, get that, oh, it was your great trial bullshit out of your ass, you fucker. I'd like to put you through a great trial, you self-righteous prick.
Yeah, well, and also there's Ki-Adi-Mundi, who literally has his own head up his ass.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, but after Ahsoka walks away from the Order, that's sort of where it ends season 5. And so overall, this kind of wraps up the season, but I think the biggest thing that makes this season almost tragic is that there was a lot of interesting ideas going for it, but I definitely feel like this was very much the first season within the show that truly became bogged down by the change in what was going on in Lucasfilm. For example, the Youngling arc was originally supposed to be like a opening preview for it like a whole different TV show, but they added it into CW after that show pretty much got all but canceled. And when you get to finally, The Wrong Jedi, there was also other constraints. Like originally the Clovis arc was supposed to be in season 5, but they ended up having to move it over because of executive issues and everything else. So it's kind of like season 5 ended up running into a lot of complications within its run. And I think what makes it also almost tragic to think about is that this really is the final season that really had Lucas at the helm at all. And it's kind of like, in a major way at least. And you could almost, in some ways, if you wanted to be meta, you could almost consider Ahsoka walking away from the Jedi Order to almost be kind of like a mini allegory of Lucas walking away from Star Wars as a whole.
One more thing I forgot to mention. Apparently, there was supposed to be an arc. I think this was tied to season 6, but the Dark Disciple book, it was actually supposed to be I believe it was supposed to be an 8-episode arc. But it
was supposed to be between season 6 and, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was supposed to be between I think it was season 7 and 8. Because originally Clone Wars was going to be an 8-season run. And I think what I remember was 4 episodes were going to be in one season. And like the first 4 episodes were going to be in one season and end on a cliffhanger. And then the second 4 episodes was going to be in another season. And the whole thing was going to be about Ventress and Quinlan Vos teaming up to try to assassinate Dooku.
Also, there's also we'll get into season 6, but one last note is that this is also season 6. Also on the DVD, actually has basically a I guess concept footage called Crystal Crisis on Utapau, where Anakin actually talks about his feelings about Ahsoka leaving the Order, which I find interesting. It's a shame that these episodes never actually got produced.
Yeah, it's definitely a tragic situation, to say the least, about how these episodes really didn't make it past like pre-production. And it's especially sad to think about that Disney didn't really think to try to finish the animation on that one when they were making season 7, but that's a topic for another day.
All right.
But yeah,
overall
rating.
Okay, so overall rating for me personally, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 5. This is mainly because of my personal taste, but I really don't like I don't like the droid arc. I don't like despite the fact that, the final arc of the season is fairly good in terms of its writing and its emotional stint. There are so many mini problems with it that I just said, you know what, screw it, I hate this arc. And also just, Ahsoka has become my favorite character to come out of this show. So it it's just like they don't even. It's not like it's like they're trying to like insult the fans in a way, or just give them the finger because they're like, hey, you like Ahsoka? Well, screw you. Is basically gonna walk away from the Jedi Order, and that's the last you're gonna see from her for a while.
Well, yeah, and the whole thing kind of, I think the biggest thing, I mean, originally Ahsoka would have made an appearance in season 6, I believe. I think that's when they were originally going to do the whole, it wasn't like Martez sisters at the time, but like Ahsoka living civilian life, I think was originally planned for season 6. But you see kind of where the problem lies is like so many of these concepts would have been followed through had the show gone a proper continuation. But the problem is that it just, a lot of these elements just didn't get these. And so as a result, it kind of leaves season 5 in almost kind of like a no man's land a little bit. And where it's like, it's a bunch of ideas that it sets up, but it doesn't properly follow them up or conclude them. And I think the biggest offender to this is Darth Maul taking over Mandalore, where to me it's absolutely criminal that neither season 6 nor season 7 went out of their way to try to adapt the Son of Dathomir storyline.
Oh, don't worry, we'll get back. We'll get to Talzin in season 6. Dear God, I am not looking.
Oh yeah, that's definitely gonna be a lot to talk about. But I'd say overall, if I were to rate season 5, I'm gonna give it a 6. I think there are enough good episodes in here to make it a pretty strong season overall, at least somewhat. Like, all the Maul episodes are really good. It's just a shame they're not followed up on. Most of the Ahsoka episodes are really good too. It's just, there's just a lot of writing hiccups that it has. And I actually genuinely consider the Onderon arc to be pretty well established from beginning to end. I think really the main two arcs that lets this season down is the Youngling arc and the Droid arc. And I think those are the two main ones that let this series down. While neither of them were anywhere near as bad as some of the bad episodes in previous seasons, in particular like Shadow Warrior or Mercy Mission, it's still nevertheless kind of bad when you have over 8 episodes that are at best mediocre and at worst are kind of a slog to get through. Meanwhile in season 4, it was like at most 3 episodes, and season 3 didn't really have many bad episodes, and except Hunt for Zero, that episode can burn in hell. Et cetera, et cetera. So I think season 5 would definitely be a 6 out of 10, which, that's just how that's going to be. But if people think this is like, the lowest that things in the show is going to get, you would be wrong, because we are going to have season 6. In fact, before we go, I got to look something up real quick. When did Disney buy Star Wars?
Well, season 6 actually released in 2014, so that's
well, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking. Yeah, Disney acquired Star Wars December 21st, 2012, which means the release of season let me find it. The release of the latter half of season 5 came out after the Disney purchase, which is kind of crazy to think about. So it definitely highlights that. I definitely think the season probably suffered from the change in management, and unfortunately, That's only going to get worse in season 6.
There's a reason
So-
why season 6 is considered the shitty season.
We're going to have fun with that one.
Oh
But
boy.
anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching us through this. If you're interested in watching any of the prior reviews, season 1 and 2 is on Deadponic's channel. Season 3 and 4 is on my channel. And the upcoming season 6 and season 7 review will be going on Deadponic's channel.
Of course,
So-
of course, I get the shitty season, but I'm getting season 7, so that's fine. But I can live with that. Anyway, I'm off. I will let you know if I see Oz. See you later.